This weekend brought two major developments in the 2020 election. One the president is hoping will work in his favor. The other he is trying to discredit. On Saturday, President Trump introduced federal judge Amy Coney Barrett as his pick to fill the seat left vacant by Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's death. Senate Republicans appear ready to quickly confirm the president's third Supreme Court nominee before the election, even though the GOP held Antonin Scalia's seat open for nearly all of 2016. Barrett is 48 years old, and her confirmation would have the potential to reshape the court for at least a generation. In her remarks, she cast herself in the mold of the late Justice Scalia, one of the staunchest conservative members of the bench.
I was lucky enough to clerk for Justice Scalia, and given his incalculable influence on my life, I am very moved to have members of the Scalia family here today, including his dear wife, Maureen. I clerked for Justice Scalia more than 20 years ago, but the lessons I learned still resonate. His judicial philosophy is mine too. A judge must apply the law as written. Judges are not policymakers, and they must be resolute in setting aside any policy views they might hold.
At her campaign event this afternoon, Democratic vice presidential nominee Kamala Harris went after President Trump and his pick for the court.
Voters should be very clear about one thing. President Trump and his party and Judge Barrett will overturn the Affordable Care Act, and they won't stop there. They have made clear that they want to overturn Roe versus Wade and restrict reproductive rights and freedoms. Judge Barrett has a long record of opposing abortion and reproductive rights. There is no other issue that so disrespects and dishonors the work of Justice Ginsburg's life than undoing the seminal decision in the court's history that made it clear a woman has a right to make decisions about her own body.
Then on Sunday came details the president has not publicly disclosed since refusing to release his taxes while running in 2016. The New York Times acquired more than 2 decades of President Trump's tax returns, painting a picture of massive losses and years of tax avoidance. CBS News has yet to independently obtain the returns. They reportedly show the president paid just $750 in income taxes in 2016, the year he won the presidency, and in 2017, his first year in the White House. Thanks to hundreds of millions of dollars in reported losses, he's paid no income tax in 10 of the past 15 years. When asked about the report, President Trump issued a blanket denial, but declined to offer up his copy of the returns as proof.
It's fake news. It's totally fake news. Made up, fake. We went through the same stories. You could have asked me the same questions 4 years ago. I had to litigate this and talk about it. Totally fake news. No, actually, I paid tax. And you'll see that as soon as my tax returns. It's under audit. They've been under audit for a long time. The IRS does not treat me well.
But that denial contradicts what President Trump himself said in a 2016 debate when he became the first presidential candidate in modern history not to release his taxes.
I will release my tax returns against my lawyer's wishes when she releases her 33,000 emails that have been deleted. As soon as she releases them, I will release my tax returns.
Caitlin Huey-Burns and Eugene Scott join me now. Caitlin is CBSN's political reporter, and Eugene is a political reporter for The Washington Post. Welcome to you both. Caitlin, let me start with you. There is a lot to break down from this lengthy story about the president's taxes, but let's start with the president's losses. If you look at this chart that we're about to show, everything above the middle line is what the president made. Everything below the line is what he lost, allowing him to write down his earnings. Is it clear if everything Mr. Trump did here was legal, Caitlin?
Well, I can't speak to what is legal, but I can speak to the message that this sends. The president himself tweeted that he took advantage of tax credits that were available. The question, however, is, are those same tax credits available to everyday working Americans, given that we talked about the president evading paying the taxes, but also when he did pay taxes in 2016 and 2017, he only paid $750, according to the New York Times reporting. Contrast that with the thousands of dollars that everyday working Americans have to pay, and that provides you with kind of this split screen. It would also be different, perhaps, if the president used this as an opportunity to say that he wants to or has taken steps to reform the system. But when you look at the tax bill passed by the Republicans in the House and signed by this president, they do offer tax cuts to the middle class, but they're very small compared to the tax cuts offered to wealthier Americans. So this could be an issue of contention at tomorrow's debate here in Cleveland. The Biden campaign will certainly want to make it one. But I think what you're hearing from the Trump campaign is that they point to ways in which he's given up his salary as president to charity. But you heard in the clip there that since 2016, at least, the president has been saying that he might release his tax returns. He has not done that. Of course, that would answer a lot of these questions that the Trump campaign is saying that they have issues with if he just released his returns for people to see.
Well, Eugene, I also want to look at the president's debt. According to the Times, he has more than $300 million of personally guaranteed loans coming due in the next 4 years. Who does he owe this money to, and what political concerns are there about someone so financially leveraged?
Well, one of the loans, at least, perhaps more than one, came from Deutsche Bank. And there's very real concern about the president's political allegiances and leanings, given that one of the individuals responsible for him acquiring that loan was the son of Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy. And so there has always been concern that the president has financial interests in matters that could compromise how he governs and the policies that he supports. And so there'll be moves by the Times as well as the Washington Post and other media outlets to figure out who else is the president indebted to and what type of influence that could have over how he's leading this country.
Caitlin, you touched on this a moment ago. So you're there in Cleveland, the site of tomorrow's presidential debate. Any indications how the Biden camp plans to go after the president on his finances?
Well, the Biden campaign has wasted no time going after the president today. They released a video showing firefighters, teachers, how much they pay in taxes compared to what the president has paid. And I think it's really interesting that the campaign and Democrats are focusing not so much on the idea that Trump didn't pay taxes, but the paltry sum that he did pay in 2016 and in 2017 while he was president. That's the number, that $750 is the number that we've seen his critics really try to focus on, comparing that payment to the payments made by working Americans. And so I think that's a really interesting message that you're going to see kind of hammered home, and perhaps in the debate tomorrow night. I think what you're also going to see Biden do is talk about how he has released his own tax returns and that he has paid taxes. This is something that he made a point of on the campaign trail during the primary, especially as he was on the receiving end of attacks against his son, Hunter Biden. He would say to the president, well, let's see your own tax returns. So you can imagine that kind of being brought up again, especially as we know the president wants to continue these personal attacks on Joe Biden and evoke his son as well.
Well, Eugene, you note the polling for this race has remained extremely stable since the end of the primaries. Is there a reliable measure of just how many undecided voters remain who might still be up for grabs and potentially influenced by stories coming out in these last few weeks?
It's hard to tell. Some of the most recent numbers I've seen have put that number as high as 15%. But the reality is it doesn't really indicate just how undecided these voters are. We know that this is not the first time news has been reported saying that the president has not paid taxes and that him not paying taxes could compromise how he leads. In October 2016, just before the election, Hillary Clinton released 3 pages of the the president's tax information, indicating that he was not paying the amount to the government that one would expect him to, and he still won. And so it's very possible that something like that could happen again. What the Democratic Party is hoping will happen is that they will be able to effectively communicate to voters that what not paying taxes actually does and how it harms the American public as a whole. The challenge they will have is that the people who are supporting Trump and leaning towards Trump often view not paying taxes as being wise and smart and somehow learning how to navigate the system in a way that benefits an individual and a family more than it benefits the government. And so trying to chip away at that worldview will take quite some time. And it's not clear if that can be done before the actual election.
Eugene, I want to ask about your latest article. In it, you note how President Trump performed better with black male voters in 2016 than any recent Republican nominee. What is the Biden campaign doing to address that?
Well, today, the Biden campaign dispatched Kamala Harris to Raleigh, North Carolina, to speak at a historically black college. But following that event, she's hosting what's called Shop Talk, which are these roundtables with many black male voters, hoping to address issues that black men have been surveyed to say are priorities for them, which include criminal justice reform, the economy, and improving jobs in the marketplace for black men, but also wanting to address just how poorly the current administration has responded to the COVID pandemic, which disproportionately affects black Americans. And very seriously, one of the top issues that black men surveyed have said affects them, which is police violence between black men and law enforcement. And so what the Biden campaign aims to do is communicate the plans they have and the solutions they hope to offer to these men that will earn their vote, as well as pointing out how Trump has failed them in 2016, despite campaigning and asking them what did they have to lose.
All right, Caitlin Huey-Burns and Eugene Scott, thanks to you both.